The 29th of May, 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, as well as like my official YouTube videos. If you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. Also go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. So it's only fair if I were to go into certain descriptions, just as I have in regards of the East Coast, as far as certain personality types and situations that I dealt with. And while I've already cleared the references in quite a few ways as to Crystal Lake, Illinois, in comparison to other areas regarding Illinois. And I don't have that many references in regards of Illinois because of the fact that I only lived there from 1998 to 2000 in March. Once March came, I was gone. Went to basic training. I would have been capable to go to basic training sooner if the paperwork was done sooner in comparison. So I actually would have been capable to leave for basic training in January or February if the situations were handled sooner. Instead, the irony is I actually would have been capable to also go to the actual graduation instead of the situations that occurred if that paperwork had been completed in the correct amount of time instead of what happened regarding my biological mother and my biological father. However, they would actually, the irony, they would have actually had 2 graduations to go to if they didn't do things the way they had. And so they could have actually attended my basic training graduation, and then I could have actually arrived at my high school as far as Crystal Lake South graduation in uniform and actually attended that particular aspect. However, situations went the way they did. So in order to graduate early, I had attended summer school. And I also was not willing to graduate in 2001 compared to 2000. I also have brought up the references to my 2nd grade nightmare and wanted to do what I could to actually mitigate the damages that I saw. So I don't want to say meditate, though in some ways I suppose that might be the word, though it probably is a different type of wording. I suppose there's different groups that might understand that. And so I made attempts where I could to find better paths and the different situations as they transpired during the time frame. So in Illinois, I had actually told people in Crystal Lake South, there were several that I spoke with about my 2nd grade nightmare, Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, as far as the cellar or basement situation, the aspects as to the grounds of Old Tenet Presbyterian Church in conjunction to General George Washington's private office out back, and quite a few aspects. Now, as far as Crystal Lake South is concerned, well, you know, high school stuff, it is as it is. I didn't want to be on the cheerleading squad. It was as it was. However, in between the time frame of both, mainly in reference to the first summer, but there was also the second summer, and went to summer school to get things taken care of as quickly as I could. And so the summer school was at Prairie Ridge High School. Now, anybody who has lived in Crystal Lake and or Lake in the Hills knows far more about Prairie Ridge than I do, even to this day. So I went to Prairie Ridge High School for that and was around Prairie Ridgians or whatever they're called. And at a certain point, I had actually dated two different Prairie Ridgians, as far as that's concerned. And the first Prairie Ridgian that I had dated was named Matt Dombrow. And I had been working at IHOP at the time and was doing what I could to get the finances to be capable to move forward, because I knew that I didn't have certain luxuries that I had seen others grow up with, and I knew that I had to double time it or triple time it to get myself as to where I needed to be, to where I could assist. And I saw multiple paths as to what I could do, and it was as it was. So there were some people from the cheerleading squad, regarding the JV cheerleading squad, who had went to IHOP. And after they had already been seated, and one of the JV, Kimberly, that particular JV cheerleader was dating a male named Adam. And they went to IHOP. They saw that I was working and everything like that. And they had a guy with them, his name being Matt Dombrow. And, well, he kind of pursued me a little bit. And I didn't understand why, because I didn't really know him. So and I'm just me at that point. I mean, I'm still me. It was just more along the lines of, well, you know, you're in high school, you're gonna go do whatever you're gonna do, and I'm gonna go live my own life. I've got to save a whole bunch of stuff, so you know, you can go whatever as far as that's concerned. And he kept trying to get my attention. So from the time frame around September of 1998, he kept it was like Pepe Le Pew in certain regards, where it was like he'd show up with Kimberly and Adam and they'd hang out, and he'd call me over because of whatever references at the time, and it was, yeah, sure, I can go and get that, or I'll let your waitress know or whatever. And his thing was, well, no, can't you go and get this and bring this over to me? Well, you have a waitress that I can, and so it took a while. And so there were a few times where that occurred. And so if I had the time, I would go and take care of it. Or if I saw the waitress, well, then he got upset because it was the waitress that was for the table, and then that would be as it would be. So a few times this occurred, and I didn't understand what was occurring, because why would I ever, in that capacity, ever think that way? So just as it is. So we started dating around, I think it was it was in the beginning of, it might have actually been August when they showed up towards the end of the month. And then it was around the end of October, beginning of November, that we went on a few dates, after he had explained that he had been making attempts to get to know me, which didn't make any sense to me. He had said he had went to some of the football games because Adam was going. And since Adam was going to support his girlfriend at the time, well, then it was possible for him to be there in regards of when I was on the cheerleading squad. And so I didn't understand why that would be that way. And he had to explain to me that that was what he considered as flirting. Okay, Sure. I didn't really understand how that was considered flirting, though okay, right. And so we started dating randomly. And it was, high school stuff. So it was the first guy I ever dated. And I had no idea as far as quite a few things. So we hung out a few times. And I went on a couple of dates here and there, but nothing really long lasting. A lot of times situations occurred and it was over and then whatever. And other people in Crystal Lake South were more along the lines of, oh, well, you go through boyfriends quickly, which I didn't even realize they were considered boyfriends when you go on 1 or 2 dates. That made absolutely no sense to me because I figured you'd actually establish that type of a relationship in comparison to just automatically assuming. But I had a different viewpoint apparently, because if you're gonna have a boyfriend, as far as being a female, well, you probably should have that discussion in comparison to just assuming. That was my opinion. That was the way I saw things. And so in Crystal Lake South, I dealt with a bunch of females that were, you have had so many boyfriends, you've gone on so many dates, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, except, why would you consider this as a boyfriend? I really didn't understand this. And so whatever it was as far as that was concerned. So I started dating Matt Dombrau, and a bunch of the JV cheerleaders knew about it because of Kimberly. And it was as it was. Well, they'd go and do their stuff, and Matt and I would go do what we do every now and then. And there was the point in time where I was spending time with Matt, and his friends were there as well. And Adam, being one of them, had brought up that. And it's weird because Adam looks similar in what I can remember to the skunk hair boy in reference to at San Antonio regarding my house and that situation regarding the 3 teenagers and my biological sister. And with the exception of the skunk hair stripe, as far as that was concerned, and if I remember correctly, he might have been named Adam as well. It's a common name though, realistically. So the male Adam from the Prairie Ridge area, he didn't really like that Matt would talk about me. And instead of whatever they would normally discuss, it was as it was. And so in comparison to whatever the normalcies were, I dealt with a few things, and then there was, Christmas time frame, and it went the way it did. A little red tank top and satin shorts. And that was, as it were, velvet tank top. Anyway, life went on because, as I was informed through Kimberly, he had been involved with a few other females, and her and Adam had found him someone more appealing and more akin to what they felt was more fun to hang out with in comparison, because I was just boring in comparison to what they wanted to go do. And it was as it was. It wasn't that I wasn't upset. I was, though it was one of those, life is as life is. It's high school. He was going to graduate that year. He was going out to, I think he was going out to gemology school in California, and it went the way it did. Later, around the year of 2002 or 2003, I don't know how I remembered Kimberly, though I called her up and she sent some pictures to me from being in the area, and she had also been in the Miss Crystal Lake pageant, and that was as it was. So time went the way it did. The other individual that I had dated from Prairie Ridge was a male named Brian. And he had a friend who unfortunately had committed suicide. Well, I had spent time at Brian's house, and they were playing CDs in the boombox. And I had noticed the difference between two different CDs. I've written a journal blog about this as far as burning CDs and having noticed hearing certain differences. And if he were to remember, which is an irony because I was watching an Eminem video, and Eminem and Dre were dressed as superheroes and stuff, and at the end of the video, Eminem's character in the video pulls this teenager or younger child over with a CD that was kind of like what it was referenced to. So in my journal blog, the ornery, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribelle.com. My journal blog, The Ornery PSA, I think it's in the year of 2021, I had written about the CDs that I had noticed. Well, this particular male named Brian was upset because I had played a CD from ICP, and it had a situation on it that I thought would be capable to be picked up listening to through the phone. And instead, he got enraged. He tried claiming that I was insensitive when I was actually making attempts to explain that I could hear certain things. And instead, it went the way it did. I'm sure by now, I would think in the year 2022, that's been noticed regarding CDs that have been burned in comparison to fresh out of the package, a brand new one. And so I made attempts to explain that, though it wasn't taken as seriously. It became a problem, and it was as it was. Well, one of the situations I had brought up when I was in the MEP station, I had informed I think he was an E7, that I have a buck gong and a buck poo, or I was raised with a buck gong and a buck poo, and because of what my buck poo had shown me as far as certain things, I knew that there was a problem in regards of certain areas in China. And so, you know, being 17 years old at that time, gonna go save the world from those situations regarding the technology stuff, regarding what I could figure out. And the E7 actually laughed at me in the office before showing me on the computer what my ASVAB had brought forward in reference to the carousel view of the different MOS choices. And I didn't understand why I was laughed at. And he was like, you're 17, look at you. You're 5'4", you barely weigh, you know, I don't even know how the computer says you weigh 123 pounds. It makes absolutely no sense. You look like you weigh less than that. And I was confused because I had actually seen the scale, and I think I weighed 111 pounds at that time. But it was as it was, and he was like, what are you gonna do? And I told him, I said, well, you know, I could be stationed over in this area, and I can, you know, take a MAC flight out, and I could do a special, you know, I could grab on the rope and kind of, you know, slide down the helicopter, and like, or I could take a regular airplane, whatever, and fly into China and go get the information and then fly back over and, you know, let the guy know about that. And he thought it was funny. He's like, oh, you're so cute to think that could happen. So are you saying that people in the Army don't do that? And he was like, no, nobody in the Army ever does, what do you think, a recon? Isn't that recon? And he's like, no, nobody in the Army ever, and it was, I don't know. I'm fairly certain. Well, he asked me what I had watched last. Well, and I can't remember what movie, I think it was Bring It On. I think that's what it was. I think it was a cheerleader movie because Melody had wanted to go see that or something, and it was, well, the irony in regards of a few things. Either that or it might have been a different one. I'm not certain. I know that it was as it was. And so he had no idea as to why I would think that anybody in the Army would jump out of a helicopter, grab onto a rope, and slide down to go get intelligence or take an airplane to go get intelligence and then bring it back to the base. Fairly certain that's how that goes. And he said, no, that's not what the Army does. I disagreed, but I was respectful in the office because it didn't make sense to me. I was fairly certain that was an Army thing. Then again, I was also upset because when that particular MEP station individual had informed me that cavalry didn't have horses and was talking about tanks, well, mechanized cavalry compared to actual cavalry, okay, yeah, I could see that. However, cavalry has horses. That's kind of a thing. So then he asked about my background, and I gave him some information, and when I had explained Old Testament Presbyterian Church, his response was, yeah, back in General George Washington's time, yeah, cavalry was with horses, but we've advanced. Well, what happens if there's a problem with technology? What do you do then? And the guy in the MEP station was like, why would there ever be a problem with technology? Well, I could go over to China and find out. I mean, I could do that if you know, I could do that. I could get you those answers. And his response was, no. Let's go see what the technology pulled up for here. MOS choices. Right. So then when, there was medic and all these other things, but there was logistics. Oh, that's perfect. And well, don't you want to? No. I'll take logistics. I'll do logistics. Well, why would you want to do logistics, don't you? Because I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere and do anything. As far as that's concerned, that is the best option for me completely. And his response was, but you went from being infantry, cavalry, combat arms, MP. Yeah, they all need logistics. Every one of them needs logistics. I can do that, and I can take care of that, and in whatever, I can make sure that they get what they need, and I can just, maintain whatever area, and they get what they need, and I have, whatever to take care of, and it is as it is. If I can't go and do recon, then I'll do that. And that'll, I'm really CDO, and I go and start explaining, and the guy's like, why would you think that would be what logistics is? Well, you do know that the infantry needs supplies, correct? And his response was, well, yeah, but they can go to logistics. And so then he brought up the cavalry. Yeah, they go to logistics, for that. Well, okay, what about combat arms? They're gonna go to logistics because they need that. Well, okay, why would the MPs need, well, there's a few things that they need when they're being MPs, and that's logistics. So I'll go do that. It was as it was regarding that. I can't be the only person. Well, he went and printed out some stuff, paperwork wise, as far as these situations went, and he brings back the paperwork, and he was surprised because he, similarly to the fax from the or facsimile from the recruiter station when they sent the facsimile in reference to my background check, there was just a symbol regarding that as far as clearance status. And I had explained, and they didn't know what it was, as well as they didn't understand why at the age of 17 I would have a symbol in comparison to a word. And I figured it had to do with Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment as to the background check that was done back then. That's what my thought process was. Nonetheless, so going back to the Prairie Ridge aspect, which I had explained to Matt Dombrell, that I was going to go and handle a bunch of things, and for Christmas he had given me a marquee cut tanzanite ring that was set in white gold. And I actually told him the band is actually ideal. And he asked me why, and I said, because of how rough I am with my hands. And he had asked me how I could be rough with my hands, and there's a lake in the area in comparison to the ocean, so it is what it is. It's no big deal, whatever. And so, never mind about that. Never mind. And so, he didn't understand that. I wasn't scuba diving yet, so that is what it is. Anyway, so in regards of, and the Atlantic area of the ocean is in a different location, such as the Atlantic area of the ocean. So the reference to Prairie Ridge, well, there were a bunch of Prairie Ridgians at the high school as far as that was concerned, and there were a mixture of people that were in the area, and they all went to that particular location for summer school. And then I met Sarah through Misty, and Misty, her nickname was Tinkerbell, and Sarah is the one who had the sleepover situation, and she was a Prairie Ridgian. She had ginger red hair and a bunch of freckles on her face. And, so she tried to be, she tried to out-snobby people I had been around in New Jersey. And then I made attempts to explain, because she had been out to New York and she had brought up being in certain areas of the city. And I said, and so she had heard how people in certain areas of New York City, specifically Manhattan, view people from New Jersey. And, I kind of remained calm, and it was, I know. They don't get anything without us. They don't have any shipments without New Jersey, but yes, they have their viewpoint as to what they think. And so that is as it is, there is the reality that, especially in Manhattan, they can't have certain things without New Jersey. Long Islanders and Staten Islanders know that. It's kind of weird though, because the borough situation, most of Harlem and the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens, they pretty much know. They know, they understand that without New Jersey, they don't get certain things. Whereas Manhattan, I don't know what it is about Manhattan. have things, and they forget that it's through New Jersey's Port Authority that everything goes through every time. They're not allowed to have anything go to the city area without it being checked at New Jersey's Port Authority. If it doesn't go through the Port Authority in New Jersey, they don't get that stuff. Otherwise, it has to be shipped, and even still, they have to go through New Jersey. Even if they come in through Pennsylvania, they still have to go through New Jersey. And it's kind of an oddity in addition to, you know, those from Manhattan. Usually, is the irony, they go to New Jersey to not have to pay the sales tax, as well as purchase clothing from New Jersey, which, you know, not only do they purchase clothing from New Jersey, but they also don't pay the tax that is in New York City. It's just something that you going to New York City need to understand. That's something that I don't know who you go see in New York City. However, that's something you need to pay attention to. You need to be more respectful when it comes to people from New Jersey. It's really important. And her response was, well, anybody who knows who I'm talking about, I think her nickname was Freckles or something like that, and it was as it was, or Giraffe Neck or something, and it was as it was. And so I didn't really get into, I already didn't get along with many females to begin with. And so my biological mother really pushed for that to occur, and it was one of those, and why don't you understand? You know, I mean, in regards of Manalapan, you know, I mean, so when you have Manalapanites who know how they have grown up, then there's this female named Sarah, and I've met all sorts of people, and then there's this snob, and it's one of those, you know, she was an only child, for those who understand that, and then her parents' house was comparable to the sizes of houses that were built behind the house in New Jersey that I grew up in. It was about the average size of a house. And it was one of those, well, congratulations that your parents can afford that. And then she was one of those that was, no, this is my house, and is as it is. So her bedroom was some stupid crazy number, something, if I were to guess, it'd be like a 7 or 8 or 900 square foot bedroom. And it was one of those, wow, I know all I have to see is your bedroom and know what type of spoiled brat you are when it comes to that, because wow. And she tried to claim that she wasn't spoiled as she pointed out all these labels. And it's, yeah. yeah, except you didn't earn any of that. Your mommy and daddy paid for that. And I explained that, well, anybody who's ever had a situation with one of those, she had responded as a stereotypical female. And that reference, you don't know anything! Okay. You don't know, my mommy told me that I'm special! I don't know, why didn't I become a scuba dive instructor in Carrollton, Texas? And so, so I just kind of, that's, so, you know, Carrollton, Texas. why didn't I become a scuba dive instructor? I've been around enough, thank you. So this was the stereotype between, and not all of the males were this way. There were some males who weren't that way. And not all of the females were that way. And then there was her regarding Sarah, and it was just, wow, you make Joy Hoover mixed with Crystal Cook and Tiffany Aswani with her younger sister look humane and decent compared to that. And her response was, what does that mean? Oh, at some point that'll make sense. It will make sense that you by yourself are at that level. Well, there was the sleepover situation and all that, and it's my birthday party and if I want to do anything, that sort of it. It was just, you're, I can't deal with your type. What do you mean my type? Go look in the mirror as far as that's concerned. It might be a little black, however, you might have some, just turn the button on and you'll get some light in your face, and that'll assist making some sense as far as that's concerned. So a lot of the Prairie Ridgians kind of reminded me of even more spoiled. Like if you were to take the most spoiled people from Marlborough Township, mix them with the most spoiled people from Manalapan Township, and add some Manhattanites, then you'd have the Prairie Ridgians for certain references as to the females that I met. Not all of them, once again, just a good portion of them. And I'm sure that there are some who have lived in various areas of Illinois who could have traveled and met some people and then fully agree. It was as it was. Well, in regards of Brian and how he had, whatever his last name was, he had this temper tantrum. And instead of paying attention to what I was making attempts to explain, his response was essentially a temper tantrum because of the details as to the CD difference. And it went the way it did. There's a reference to my biological father cleaning a firearm on the kitchen table. That would be who he was doing that in that reference, because Melody had informed Mike and Anna as to that particular individual being a problem. And he just was. He was like a female version of Sarah in certain references. How he tried to claim that he knew more, he tried to claim how he knew better. In comparison, he did a lot of the I know how people are from New Jersey sort of thing, and it was one of those, I didn't have patience in those references. He had actually brought over a rose to my biological parents' house, and well, I threw it in the trash because that's where it belonged as far as that one was concerned, in my opinion. And so they met him once, and it was only after Melody had informed them about him, and he had this issue where he tried to claim certain things as far as insensitivity to his friend's situation, and I made attempts to explain to him that I was actually giving information to actually pay attention to these details, because in comparison to him having only lost one person in his entire life. I knew a few people that I had lost, and he thought that I had been insensitive to him losing one person. Compared to the 1980s and 1990s, especially 1993. And so it's certain similar situations regarding certain areas in the state of Texas where they tried to claim that I didn't really know loss at all, and they tried to claim that they knew more about my life than they actually did. And so it went the way it did, as far as that was concerned. And so then I met some people in Cary Grove, and Cary Grove is kind of a mixed bag. Cary Grove is kind of like South Central New Jersey. That's pretty much like Cary Grove for a reference too. So you have some pockets of certain areas and some pockets of other areas, and it's just every type of, low, middle, and high class, depending on where you go and which neighborhood. And then when you take in consideration Elgin, so I met an individual at the MEP station. We dated briefly, and it was one of those, I don't foresee this being long-term. Thanks for the time, and I have to go. And he was upset because we weren't going to the same basic training, which I explained to him. First and foremost, we haven't dated long. We dated maybe a week or two. It literally was just that length of time. And again, I signed the paperwork on the 6th of March in 2000. That week, I went out to the MEP station. Literally the next day, I went to the MEP station. So my ship out date was the 21st of March, which translates to having been there the night before, the 20th of March in 2000. And that was at that level as to feelings. And it was one of those, but I have stuff to do, and I have lives to save, and I gotta go. Which is kind of funny, only because looking back now in the year 2022, it probably seems a little 1940s-ish, where it's like, thanks, sweetheart, I's got to go. You do your thing. In comparison, I have my career, I have my life to live, and no, that's fine. I have stuff to do, and you can, whatever that is. I'm going to be busy for the next 20 years or so. So bye. I have some work to take care of, and then after 20 years, then I'm gonna have another few years to take care of some other stuff. It won't be as busy, but it'll still be busy. I'll still have stuff to do, and then the next 20-ish years, I'll have some other stuff to do. I've got a lot of work to take care of, so thanks, sweet cheeks. Bye. And I can't even remember his name. He was just like, sure. When I have a reason, I got stuff to do. I have a life to live, and I have lives to save, so. Which is ironic because, my biological father, before signing the paperwork for me to actually go, I dealt with military style smoking for months before being capable to go. And when he finally broke down, it was like, fine, I'll sign the paper, rah, rah, rah. Thank you, I appreciate it. What actually convinced, well, I will have room, board, education, I will have a paycheck, and whenever I actually need to go to college, you won't have to pay for my college. Well, that was a great thing for him. My biological mother, on the other hand, was as it was. And so I was like, I'm just saying, the way Anna is, no. And so she had tried to get me to go to community college, and I wasn't on top of what I already had done, and it was just to make time as she wished, and it was so I actually disenrolled myself from that community college, had the money go back to her credit card. I was like, nope, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm gonna go I have choices, and I'm gonna go take my choices and do as I so choose. And so it went the way it did because my biological mother I knew how she was gonna be. I already grew up with her as a child and a teenager, and it was not gonna be that way. I was not gonna have where the college was paid for in reference to Anna at all, because I knew how that was. So she had paid for 2 or 3 courses in regards of McHenry County College with the credit card, after I had already done the extra work to graduate early. And it was, no, I'm going in the military. I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna go do this, and I'm not going to deal with this at all. And so that lets you know other factors regarding and so those who have met in that reference as to those situations, and no, I'm not willing to deal with certain things. I'm gonna go do my own thing. I'm gonna make my own way. And I had explained my entire plan at that time, and it was, I'm gonna earn my way. And his thing was, well, why don't you want to be an officer? Because I don't want to deal with the politics. Yeah, no. Soon as you are an officer, you automatically deal with politics. I don't want to deal with that. No, thank you. I don't have to worry about politics unless I get to about an E7. Then you start dealing whatever, and and so the only way you really don't deal with politics as an officer is if it's field grade promoted, and that's kind of the only way, because that's how that goes, and I'm perfectly content with that because I don't want to deal with that. I did grow up in New Jersey. You do know that, right? I don't want to deal with that. No, I'm good. I don't wanna. No. And his response was, well, why don't you think you would be good in politics? Have you met me? Have you met me? And his response was, well, yes, of course I fucking met you. Da-da-da-da-da. Have you? Have you really truthfully met me? Or do you have a rose-colored glasses in reference to who I am? I think you do. Because, oh, well, you'll only do this, and no. You don't know what real life is? I grew up going where with you? That's beside the point. What could you have ever seen? I went where with you? Don't be stupid. I went where with you when you were gonna go drop off some of the watches and jewelry? No, I know better. No. No, thank you. I'm gonna go do this. So, in reference to Cary Grove, I made friends with some. That was mainly Christina and her little brother. I don't remember ever meeting her older brother. And her little brother, he was a little millennial. And so I did what I could to it not being scary for him. He was, when I'd go over Christina and to see Christina and spend time with her and stuff like that and get to know her parents and whatnot, her younger brother, he just kind of lean. I'd have to keep my arm around him like this, and it's like, yes, shorty. And it was as it was, but I didn't ever get to meet her or his older brother as far as that was concerned. The parents were surprised because I hadn't ever seen a toaster oven. I've seen a toaster, but I hadn't ever seen a toaster oven. I figured you just use an oven. I was explained that you could use the toaster oven for smaller items in comparison, which made sense. And yet I was still confused because they had to use so many times regarding the toaster oven. And I was like, but if you just put it in the oven, you can get them all done at the same time. And it was as it was. Yes, it kind of looks like the little bake light thing. That's what that looks as. Only a little bit bigger. As far as that's concerned. And so, but they were more laid back in comparison to some of the other Cary Grovians, as far as that was concerned. Because a lot of the Cary Grovians kind of, there was a weird sensation for some of them, as far as it was almost eerie going through Cary Grove in certain areas. I hadn't ever had a town that I drove through by that point in time or been through that gave me the creeps, where I was like, ooh, what is in this vicinity? Wait, what happened here? As what is this area? Like was there some massacre that happened here? Was there some Native Americans that came through this area and this was a what is this area? And I got made fun of for that. And I don't know what this area is, but no, I can't. I don't know. I don't know. It just seems weird. I don't know. And Christina had done this thing where she was like, I'm gonna scare my dad, and I'm gonna lay here, like, you know, equivalent of a pharaoh having that. And I looked at her and I was like, that's not okay. That's a situation you might want to reconsider because of how that can go, because of the grounds that are in Cary Grove. You might want to really rethink that. And she was like, oh, it'll be a fun whatever. I don't think so. I don't think you understand that particular set of grounds that surround this property. And her response was, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It was as it was. We had gone on so in Crystal Lake, there's this term called cruising the strip. And a bunch of teenagers drive back and forth, and there was a couple of males from Lake in the Hills, which Lake in the Hills is, again, it's kind of a mixed bag sort of area, and some of them aren't too snobby, and then there's the other ones. And the ones that aren't too snobby usually went to Crystal Lake South, and then there were the other ones. And it was, as it was regarding that was concerned, it almost was like Manhattan or in some ways Lake in the Hills was kind of like Manhattan. in certain references regarding those who went to Lake in the Hills High School compared to the Lake in the Hill guys that went to Crystal Lake South. The guys who went to Crystal Lake South seemed more New Jerseyan for a overall reference compared to the Lake in the Hillians that went to Lake in the Hills High School, which I actually have to use in reference to certain ironies. So when my biological mother would listen to the sound of music and the lyrics got to the hills are alive, run, run! I guess there's a joke in regards to Cary Grove in those particular references, because Christina had tried to date, I think it was Philip Mikowski's friend, and I had told Christina, well, I actually like him better, but alright, fine. It is what it is, and I had been honest about it. Well, he had told Philip, he got all upset in comparison, and he was all, why would you rather date him? I can't remember his name. He's like, why would you rather date him? This was on the first night of meeting you. Get over it. And it was one of those. So, at that time, I think we were dating like 3 weeks. He's like, how could you say that? I was being honest. I explained this to him. And he's like, but you'd rather. That was that. You know what? If you're going to throw such a titty baby temper tantrum over that, I don't have patience for that, because that sort of spoiled bratness, I don't care for. Because it literally was the dumbest thing I had ever listened to someone be upset about. And I don't want to date you anymore. Okay, that's fine. And then he was upset because I wasn't upset. It was one of those, I literally was just being honest and acknowledging that the night that we met, I actually thought your friend was physically more attractive than you. And you want to throw a temper tantrum, even though that I had been dating, in that capacity. How stupid do you have to actually be? And then, why are you calling me stupid? Because you're actually upset. I actually had to explain this to him. Because you are upset that I told you the truth. And instead of being appreciative that I told you the truth, in comparison to Christina going and telling you this later, wouldn't it make more sense for you to not be such a whiny titty baby temper tantrum throwing little bitch? And he got all upset. He didn't understand how being honest made a difference. And it was one of those, it's not my fault, you're stupid. So that's probably, that type of situation. Throwing a little temper tantrum over nothing that is of any value or importance regarding the actualities of, and if you're going to be upset because I acknowledged it right off the bat in comparison to you finding out however many years later, just think of how stupid you would be if it took you more than a year for you to figure out that that would actually be the best way to actually be. Just imagine what lack of intelligence, and I actually told this guy this, just think of what lack of intelligence you would have to have if you had learned this a year later. And the guy, his response, this guy, Philip Mikowski, he threw this temper tantrum. He's like, you don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, you know what, whenever, it'll probably be a bit of time, but whenever you realize it'll probably be however many females, and then you'll learn that literally the aspects of being truthful directly from the start is better in comparison to learning later. And whenever you learn that is whenever you learn that. So you'll take accountability for your stupidity, because that'll be your responsibility. However, whenever you learn that as to those particular situations, just think, At the very minimum, I was honest directly from the start, and however long it takes, because we went back and forth for a couple of hours. And it's like, at some point, you'll realize that that's actually important. So the irony as far as that's concerned, because just think of what the level of intelligence would be if it took longer than a year for that male to actually figure out that it's actually better to have that acknowledgement directly from the start in comparison to more than a year. I mean, that would just be it's done, but it is as it is. So that's kind of really the situations as far as that's concerned, because otherwise the majority of people that I had met throughout the different areas of Illinois, and since I went to the club in Palestine, as well as some pool halls in the area, a lot of people in Illinois had this kind of pop culture. It was heavier in Illinois regarding the pop culture references than in the state of Texas. It was really weird because a lot of them, they were, oh, I know how people are from New Jersey. And it didn't matter where I went, with the exception of when I was dating Matt Domrau. I was literally the only male who didn't do that sort of thing that I had dated that was from and in Illinois. Thomas, as far as that was concerned, he didn't do that, although he was also older. As far as that was concerned. So this is another reason why when I've dealt with certain situations, it's one of those in 2000, 2001, and 2002, I made attempts to explain to these people, I don't know what your levels of in regards of time is concerned. However, I didn't have that much time with you, and so these people that were upset because of the after effects of my head injury, well, first and foremost, it's my head injury and not theirs. I'm the one who deals with the after effects of the subarachnoid hemorrhage as well. They don't. I'm the one who deals with headaches. They don't. I'm the one who deals with migraines. They don't. I'm the one who deals with memory deficits. They don't. I'm the one who deals with cognitive disorders. They don't. And I'm the one who went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. They didn't. And so these individuals that at random points in time, even in the year of 2002 during the Christmas time frame, there were 8 or 9 females at her friend's house that knew Jimmy. And these females had this sort of uppity viewpoint. I think Claire was there as well or whatever. And they had their opinion as to what Jimmy should have done because he had stopped by Crystal Lake. And I asked, well, why would he have to? And she had said that she was working at the optometry office and she had felt that he should recognize her when he was getting his glasses or contacts. And I asked her, did you say that you were working at an optometrist office? And she said yes. And I said, so the place where you get your eyes checked for your vision? And she said yes. Said, okay, so let me understand this correctly. You know he wore glasses in high school? And she said yes. And I said, okay, and so you were working at an optometrist's office? And she said yes. I said, so at the optometrist office, where they check your vision, and if you have any issues with your vision, you get prescription eyeglasses and or contacts? And she said yes. And so I sat there in the kitchen at the time, I think it was a circular table, and I leaned back in the chair and I was very tipsy drunk. I had a whole bunch of Jägermeister with mint schnapps Jello pudding. I was quite warm at that point in time. They were amazing. So good. It was so good. So tasty. So drunk after that. And I dealt with what I dealt with, and I learned about hangovers. That was bad. And so it was as it was, nonetheless. At that point in time, these females from Crystal Lake South, all of them from the graduating class of 2001, they all just didn't understand how Jimmy couldn't have acknowledged D at an optometrist's office when he was picking up his eyeglasses and or contacts. I made attempts to explain this, and because I took Jimmy's side, these females, similarly to Philip Mikowski, the lack of understanding from that knowledge was really weird to me. Because it was one of those, you do realize that's common sense. And they tried to defend how they stood out more, and it was one of those, accept the fact that when you have vision issues and you have to have glasses and contacts, how is it that you actually think that that's like, what about you would be that recognizable without the glasses and or contacts? And her response was, well, why would you say anything otherwise? Well, common sense dictates that. You know you're a brunette, and she said yes, okay. And you know your skin tone pretty much blends into all the others. And she's, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, you pretty much are all about this shade of color. And they were upset by that. And I don't really care. It's the truth. It's the facts. There's nothing that really distinguishes you that much from one another. You're around the same type of height, and then they got offended by that, some of the females, and it's like, but you're around the same type of height. And they got upset, and it was, okay, so how many of you are above 6 feet tall? None of you? Okay. And so they got offended because I didn't give them the chance to answer. And because it was a rhetorical question, there's a difference between a rhetorical question and actually asking a question. And so the time in Illinois was kind of a little bit warping in certain review looking back now in the year of 2022, because some of the situations that I dealt with, I could reminisce to my time in either Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or New York. There was very little that actually was that different. So when you take in consideration cheerleading and how I didn't want to be on the cheerleading squad, well, that was similar to how I didn't want to be in drama. And I had wanted to be on the wrestling team. When you take in consideration the beauty pageant that I didn't want to be a part of, well, that was, and you add the reference to being made Marian in that situation, well, that was like the church place at Old Testament Presbyterian Church, where it was, well, okay. And then in regards of being honest, well, that was anywhere. because as long as, because I can only tell the truth, so for individuals that, yes, the truth is in our favor, yay! And then in the, 20 minutes later, oh, she's so mean for having her opinion, stupid truth, whatever. And, or how dare you tell the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth. What is wrong with you? I literally had people tell me that at a few different situations. One of them being the cheerleader competition as far as the score, which that was as it was. And it was the time in Illinois, that's the only way I can really describe it. So I had been a hostess at Andy's restaurant, and at Andy's I had this little maybe 10-year-old come up to the cash register for me to take care of, and he goes, "Did you fall from heaven?" No, I didn't fall from heaven. Why would I fall from heaven? And he looked at me and goes, "Because you look like an angel." Aww. That's sweet of you. And why are you saying that though? What are you looking for? Because I'm just wanting to know what you're up to. And oh no, was your dad, what was the other one that one used? I think it was, your dad a baker? And so I started laughing because of the differences between my biological sister and I. I was like, well, and because I am as I am, I answered, well, same oven, different baker. I don't know, it is what it is. Why? What you got? And his response was, because you have a nice set of buns. Boy, get back to that here. Woo! This little 10-year-old. What? You what is that? And so then the rest of the time, because of the way the cash register area was, I'm like this, and I'm like, I have a little butt. Leave my little butt alone. I have a tiny, because then, I'm a female, I'm a teenager, and it's like, how big? How big is it? How big is my booty? I can make fun of myself because, I was born in the year of the dog. And so, what is this? Why? So then the rest of the time at the cashier, I'm like, yeah, so, whatever. And so one of the customers actually had moved the register a little bit, and I'm like, well, I'll get that here. There you go. Mind. Was as it was. So there was that. It was a little bit weird. Then there was another guy when I was at when I was at Jim Malotti's. I know I'm jumping around regarding time frames as far as employment. So at Jim Malotti's, I dealt with the owner's eldest son. As far as that was concerned, because of the car situation, so I got the 1993 Honda Civic, and I had never driven a manual transmission, and I learned how to drive real quick, and he was surprised as to how, it literally took not even half an hour for me to figure out how to drive the manual transmission. It was just no big deal. And then shortly after not going on a date with Jim Malotti's eldest son, then I was no longer working at the dealership. As far as that was concerned, because that is as it is. But I was also babysitting his little half-brother, which, it was as it was, because, that Yeah, it was as it was. I'd actually sit with his younger half brother, and when I was babysitting, I would discuss things with him in comparison to having him watch a lot of TV. Mr. Malati and I, we went out on the back porch, and he had reshaped the entire pool area to like a kidney bean. And he was like, I thought it looked as a kidney bean, and he was like, no, it doesn't look like a kidney bean. Yeah, or a jelly bean, one or the other. Kidney bean or jelly bean, it kind of went in the same. And so it was as it was. And then at Holiday Inn, when I had worked there as the receptionist, or the operator, I should say, the operator receptionist, I just stayed in the back, although there were a few times where I'd come out to the front area when the female at the front desk, she had a few, those who have worked in the hotel industry, you understand this. And so I walked out from the back, and I just kind of, what seems to be the problem here? And all of a sudden the males weren't as certain females would know. And though then there were other factors regarding HR and that, because of the evening hours as to the parking lot after having handled a situation. And so in comparison, the male thought I was flirting instead of paying attention to details, because that just is as it is. And so I don't know what that a custom aspect was, but it was as it was. Though at the time when I was working at Jim Malati's before the eldest son, I was dating Thomas, and Thomas had shown up, and he's like, yeah, I just bought this car, and what was it, the Nissan Xterra? And really, that one? That one, really? Really? The Nissan Xterra? What color? And, oh, I think he got the yellow one, and it was, I mean, you're gonna drive it, so that is as it is, that's fine. That's, I don't have to sit in the car, correct? Awesome, that works. That's kind of, I know what, there's like better shades of yellow than that, so, no, that's fine. Comparison. And so, though there was a situation after I had the 1993 Honda Civic, shortly before I had no longer worked at Jim Malati's, I went to the bowling alley. Can't remember who I went to the bowling alley with, and this older male went to kick the window of the car, and it was, what is this problem? Well, then there was also, and I got yelled at for something regarding the car, and it's like, why would I be, who do I know in this reference to this car? It doesn't make any sense what you're talking about. I literally had the car for less than a week, maybe week and a half. And it went the way it did as far as that particular individual. Then during the cruising of the strip situation, there was a guy who had I think it was a Mustang, and he and his mom showed up to the dealership, and his mom was like, I think he was an only child type. He actually, the irony, he looked similar to the guy who was in my underwater naturalist scuba diving certification course that had whined about having my Bluetooth in. And ironically, if it wasn't the same individual, it is what it is. When I was taking care of his mom's paperwork, a phone call came in. So being the receptionist, as far as that was concerned, I answered the phone call. All she had to do was sign paperwork. That was all she had to do. Her son threw this temper tantrum because of what occurred on the strip and how I didn't really have any need for his opinion, and he had tried to, I think he was from Prairie Ridge area as well. It was one of those, I don't have time for you. Like, I'm actually working to actually get myself to a better location. I don't need your type of person in my life. When your type of people do that just because you're lucky enough to have been born to a mommy and daddy who have all sorts of finances, you are not supposed to go and utilize that to cause needless problems. That doesn't translate to you being humane. That translates to you being a douchebag. And it was as it was, and how dare I sort of situation, because I let him know when I had seen him before the time frame at Melodi's, because he had tried saying something about the dealership, and I stood up for the dealership. We went back and forth, and I think Christina was in the car, ironically. And this guy, he, well, look at how, whatever, I'm so whatever. It's like, Christina started laughing, and she's like, yeah, she's from New Jersey. And I was like, no, well, that's something. And the irony is, I wanted to get new license plates. And instead, my biological father was like, no, you don't need to get new license plates. It's no big deal. Just leave it the way it is. And I was like, I don't know. And there were situations the way it went in comparison. And I made attempts, but because of certain other factors, their opinions were as their opinions were. And so, in that regard of the small town situation all over the area, and so one thing after the other, in reference to, that mail was just a situation. And it was at a time when I really did not need to at all. Not that I really needed to deal with certain things, but it was at a time when I had certain situations going on, and it was as it was. And so that particular factor, after having gotten back from New Jersey, I wasn't needing that particular individual to be running his mouth and being that particular way, because I had to go back to New Jersey to testify at that point. And so then there was this particular reference of, I had met with him and his friend I actually got along with in comparison to him, and he was all upset because he had a 6-speed in comparison, and he thought that made him special. And it was, yeah, except I know I know a few things when it comes to the differences. You're a type of person that pays for that in comparison. It's the stock version, right? And he was like, yeah, but it was an upgrade. Yeah, that's cute. Okay, no, that's fine. Just work at a car dealership. What would I know? No, that's fine. Grew up around mechanics and stuff. Yeah, what would I know about cars? No, that's fine. Go right ahead. Yeah, I think that you're all special because of that. Yeah, you're special, all right. And it was as it was. And so he tried to scare me regarding driving around Bull Valley. He's like, look how dark it gets. And he turned off the headlights. Well, no joke. Huh. So let me do this math. You turn off the headlights and it gets dark when you're driving around at night. Who would have figured that out? And he was like, look how scary it is. Yeah. Maybe if you turn the headlights back on, it won't be so scary for you to drive around at night. And he tried doing all this stuff. I don't know what the deal was as far as that was concerned. And it's like, so you get scared. This is what I translated it to. So let me understand this. While you're driving a car at night, you turn out your headlights and you get scared. Well, simple math is you turn the headlights on and you drive. Or, and I actually did say this when we got to a different area, and I was like, here's an idea. If you get scaredy driving at night and you turn out the headlights, either one, keep the lights on, you might not get scaredy when it comes to driving at night. Option 2, drive in the daytime. Then you don't get scaredy when you're driving at night. And he looked at me, he was about this height compared to me. And he looks at me, goes, oh, so you think you're just so smart going and pointing that out? I don't really think I'm smart for pointing that out. I think that's pretty common sense-ish. So if you're scaredy driving at night, either keep the lights on or drive during the daytime if you get scaredy driving at nighttime. And so shortly after that, I wasn't working at Jim Eladi's after. It was a combined amount of time in that reference, and it was just, wow, okay. So there was a guy that had worked as a porter in the back area that I had briefly dated, and he had driven a yellow Ford Ranger. And I was like, what is up with you people driving yellow cars? I know when it comes to my Zippy, as far as my VW Beetle, that's one thing in that reference and comparison. But they were really into this, I don't know why or where it came from, as far as all of these different people. Even Mike had, meaning my biological father, he had gotten a Hyundai Scoop that was yellow. And it was one of those, what is going on with all of these people driving these weird colored vehicles? And it was funny because in one of the rooms in Illinois, before having painted over the walls, in one of the rooms had actual sunflowers in it, as far as the wallpaper was concerned. And it was one of those, you're kind of, what is this? And so, which is irony because the house in Illinois, the realtor said, it's a handyman's dream. Yeah, translation, a whole bunch of work to do. My biological father didn't believe me when I had been told that in New Jersey. I was like, so how much work does that mean I have to do? And he was like, no, it's not that bad, da da da. You know, Anna's sister Edie helped pick it out. That seems problematic. And Mike was like, no. Anna and Edie are sisters. You do know how Patricia and I are. And Mike was like, that's different. That's different completely. How is that different? And his response was, because there were more. Which I looked at him and I was like, so you mean there's more issues because there's more siblings? And he was like, no. Yeah, no, see, Patricia and I, there's two. There are how many that Anna comes along with, and you think this is gonna go well? How about this? How are you with Linda, as far as his sister? That we don't need to talk about, you don't need to go there. So we're gonna move to Illinois partially because Anna wants to spend time with her sister and brother? No, thank you. I want to stay in New Jersey. Yeah, I'll stay in New Jersey. No. No, I'm okay. Yeah, no. So wait, hold on. The irony of ironies. So the sister that I don't really get along with, she doesn't live in Illinois. And Mike was like, no, she's smart. At this point in time, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. She is smart to not live in that. No. No. And so then there were issues because of the viewpoint that Chris and her husband Brian were snobs because they got into wine. And so then, well, I couldn't drink alcohol, so why would I understand? Well, then I go and work in Olive Garden after I woke up from my coma, and while I was stationed at Fort Sam Houston for a small amount of time before I was taken off the military, and it is as it is. And when I worked there, as far as that was concerned, in the year 2000, then that's where I met Crystal Lynn, as far as that was concerned. Nonetheless, among a few others, we learned how to explain the way wine tasted. And so the manager, as far as I was concerned, gave me a glass to spit in. And because I couldn't drink alcohol, and I also didn't know what it would do regarding my prescriptions. And so even though I was only 18 years old as well, nonetheless, the others, they drank whatever alcohol. I actually had been, I understand this is part of the job training, except I probably shouldn't be drinking alcohol. And so they had explained, the managers and the assistant managers and the manager had been upset because they thought I was being difficult, and it was, except I literally got an Article 15 and I'm confused as far as that's concerned. However, you're telling me this is actual alcohol, and their response was, yeah, you could just get over it, it's no big deal. And I said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And so it was as far as that was concerned. But yeah, I was in near Eisenhower, if I remember correctly. We'd have people from the Applebee's that came over randomly and vice versa. And because I wouldn't go out with a bunch of them after work because I had to go do stuff, it was one of those, oh, well, if you actually were cool like us, which they tried that peer pressure situation, and that doesn't work well. I can tell you that right now. If you want to try that, I'm not one of those. I don't go along with that. People in Illinois tried that, and I wasn't interested, because that was more in reference to the summer school at Prairie Ridge, where they tried doing certain things, and it was one of those, I don't have patience for that. I don't have time for that. There are more important things regarding the world, and not just the United States of America at that point, because of my nightmare from when I was in second grade. So when they tried doing that, it was one of those, you can get to stepping. I don't have time in regards, and I don't have patience for that. I have stuff that I actually have to do to actually, save people. So while you go and do your childish stuff, which then the people in Illinois, especially in summer school, they got upset because they were like, why are you calling this children? Well, if you act like children, I'm going to treat you like children. That's how that goes. I don't have patience for that sort of stuff, and I have stuff to take care of. So it was a very weird time. So in reference to the beauty pageant situation, when we went up to Chicago, I had to actually, similarly to Nuevo Laredo regarding the guys from Medical Hold Unit, only in the Chicago area doing that. And the females didn't understand why I was like, move on. Like, keep going. You need to pick up the pace. We don't need to be walking at a slow pace. I don't know why you think that that's a good idea. And so some of them were like, oh, but and they yelled this in the area of Chicago. They yelled that they were tourists and they wanted to get the tourist experience. And I was like, that's not a good idea to say. And so one of the females that were older had said, oh, you don't know anything. Chicago is nothing like where you're from, except if you go and say you're a tourist. That's when that is, because if you go say that, yeah, no, you want to walk around in Chicago area, don't let Michigan Ma fool you. This area where it's the Michigan Mile. Yeah, no, people such as yourself. No. No. And so it was a really weird situation regarding Illinois, because there were certain similarities as to each and every area of Illinois, and yet they had very little differences, and yet there were some differences, just not the way in New Jersey to New York to New York City to Pennsylvania and the different cities of, like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. There are differences between those two cities, not just because of the history, though the energetic portions as to the people as well, and then the surrounding areas. In comparison to where Illinois, you have Chicago, you have the suburbs outside of Chicago, and then there's the rest of Illinois. And there's certain energetic portions. I don't know what it is, if it's just the energy of Illinois. I don't know if it's the history as far as certain factors. Though, here, there were, it's not that there weren't good people, there were. I'm sure there still are. It was just certain oddities when going through the area and the way people viewed things at that time. And it was very, very pop culture referencey. It was so much more pop culture reference that when I was volunteering at 9 Lives Books, they didn't meet the pop culture references that I dealt with in Illinois. Like 9 Lives Books, the 3 males, as far as that was concerned, they couldn't, and they were as they were, they couldn't touch the way the pop culture references were regarding Illinois. I don't know why, but they were very pop culture-y referencey compared to 9 Lives Books. And 9 Lives Books had books, so and they got into comic books and stuff like that, and even their comic book stuff didn't really get to the level of the pop culture references as to Illinois. It was really, really weird. But that's this review regarding this year of 2022 as to that comparison. And realistically, with the exception of Matt Dombrow and 1 or 2 of the friends that weren't Adam, and then a couple of people here and there, in Crystal Lake South and Crystal Lake Central, there were, like any high school, having certain pockets of. But other than Matt Dombrow to a degree, and then some of his friends, and then the guy who had the Mustang, his friend, there were a few that were kind of in that similar, not as pop culture referencey as a lot of the other ones. And it just it seemed really weird to me. I didn't really understand it. Like, they memorized commercials. like full commercials. So Crystal Cook actually memorized the entire Kraft cheese commercial. And it was, why would you do that? I mean, sure. And so she explained it to, she was dating a guy and she would repeat it to him. Seems weird. I don't understand that. Why? Why would you do that? And she had said that he had thought it was funny. Okay. Why is that funny? And so she would go and do the whole thing. And it's like, okay, I don't know. I gotta move to get to work and stuff like that. This is really, I don't even understand. And the irony is there were certain areas in various portions of different times after having woken up from my coma, after my head injury on Palm Sunday. I really didn't understand how it got to that level. And so I made attempts to explain, give warnings as I did. So maybe that gives a little bit more of a reference to certain situations, possibly. And today is the 29th of May, 2022. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube videos, as well as go to my website, www.susanmealing.com in a time zone. And make sure, if you're going to leave comments, to have etiquette and respect. In conjunction to that, go to look at my journal blog on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com. You guys have a good day.